Hello, and welcome to Apache TinkerPop's home here on Twitch. Today we have another TinkerPop Wide stream where we explore the wider TinkerPop community, looking at tools and libraries and graph systems built on the TinkerPop framework or even applications built on those foundations. Today we get to learn about Apache Airflow, an open source workflow management platform for data engineering pipelines. And how it can use Gremlin with its new TinkerPop provider. We have Ahmed Farhan, the developer behind this feature, this new provider, here to introduce Airflow to the TinkerPop community and this Gremlin integration. So with that, thank you for doing this.
No worries, my pleasure. My pleasure to be giving this kind of stream and give you a glimpse about it. Of course, I'm Ahmed Farhan, data engineer. I've been, you can say, like using Apache Airflow for over 2 years, but with TinkerPop, I was kind of later in my Airflow experience to use it, and it's kind of interesting to see that kind of tool now integrated with Airflow.
Yeah, great. Yeah, that's great. And I think what's interesting was that, I was kind of, was it 6 months ago or so, I was really interested in seeing this integration kind of put together. Airflow is a pretty active, very active community in Apache. And, I went, as soon as I went to go start figuring out how to build it and, where the integration points were. And like, just as I'd gotten it building, I looked and you'd had it set up basically a pull request. So it was it all kind of came together. You kind of just beat me to actually doing it, which I thank you for, because I didn't really want to spend time on that, but I was happy to help in reviewing and offering some ideas and things along the way. Yeah, again, sort of a serendipitous moment there with that. In any event, I will add your slides here, get your screen up here so that put you in charge. And with that, I will cede the floor to you.
Yeah, cool. I guess I can start and with Apache Airflow and what it is. For many people, probably they've heard about it as an open source, and probably it's really one of the maybe biggest within the Apache software as well, where it has the biggest community as well, as I hear. And it's kind of like a tool that I think it was basically given away by Airbnb, I think, to the Apache Software Foundation. So what it is, though, for the people who have heard about maybe the managed services there for orchestration or for doing some data extraction tools so that you can load it somewhere. For the people who are using AWS, maybe you can say it's what Glue is, but more here it's like a code base kind of oriented, and it's more like a drag and drop. So what you can do with Airflow is almost maybe similar to that if you worked with Glue, or if you worked with Data Factory, or even maybe other tools like Fivetran or other ones. It kind of does the same thing, but here it's more code oriented. Like using Python, you can create scripts, and then you can also author and schedule and do more monitoring workflows with them. Its components are usually just like the basic ones, which are scheduler for scheduling tasks within Airflow. It has trigger as well to trigger your workflows, and also your API server, which previously was a web server before the latest release of Airflow 3. For anyone who heard about Airflow 3 recent release, now it's more like an API server where you have, I think, like an fast API backend with a React, where it was before, I think, Flask application, which was in the Airflow 2 version. And then you have the worker and the DAG processor. Probably the last one, I can just explain it briefly. What it does is kind of it fetches in the DAG or the scripts for yourself from different from whatever your repo is. If it's local repo or if it is a GitHub repo, it kind of manages that for you. But maybe talk more about what DAG processor is, like what the term DAG itself means, which is direct acyclic graph. Really, Airflow has dominated that term. I think whenever someone says DAG, it feels like more you're talking about Airflow, but I think it's used within other technologies. So it's not just in Airflow probably, but you can say Airflow whenever someone says the DAG, you basically think about a pipeline or a workflow. And you probably hear me a lot saying DAG. Even when I open up the UI soon, when I do like a demo, you'll see DAGs and you'll see like me saying it's clicking it while clicking around. So what's its use cases? Delving more into it, I did briefly explain, but maybe here talk about it within like a role based. So with software engineers, you can say like they can orchestrate Python scripts and just to run them to do some I don't know, could be like applications optimization or some maybe can take it beyond that and do like if you're a networking person, you can do alterations to the network maybe with Python. But I've never myself implemented that or seen it, but probably you can give it a go maybe for the people who are interested to do that kind of change and use Airflow for that. Soon, I think Airflow would also be able to support other languages. They haven't released it yet, so I think it's still under development. So it's something that will expand to, I think, other languages. I believe C# is one of them, and I don't want to mention other ones, but I think Java as well, because they are one of the most being used there, as well as a backend tools. And of course, the most users here of Airflow are data engineers, you can say, where they are using it for data, because that's what it was meant to be built for in its early stages, where you do extraction, loading, and doing transformations with the data. And also like side by side with analytics engineers, where they do like transformations, like a transformation scripts execution or orchestration. If you used OLAP databases, if it's SQL Server, or if it's I don't know, if you're using one of those big data warehouse tools like Snowflake, where you need to execute transformations like store procedures, or even if you're familiar with the most probably one of the popular tools for transformations like DBT. That's something that also being used for transformations as well. You can orchestrate that using Airflow. And you can go beyond, like refreshing reports using APIs, or refreshing some, I don't know, it could be reports, not necessarily in a BI, but it can be sitting somewhere to create a Python, report, and that can spin it up and send, a report to someone in an email kind of thing. So this kind of things can almost be done with Airflow. And also you can, if you're an integration specialist, or you're more like someone working in a environment where you take data from somewhere and ingest it somewhere else. As an example of that, you might be extracting data from your database, like it can be even your OLAP database, right? Like your analytics database, and then loading that somewhere else, like a third-party tool. You can say a CRM tool or an ERP tool, where you can call some APIs to send those data in. So these kind of the use cases that I would say based on what role you are in. I was a data engineer, and I almost done all of those things, maybe. So I wouldn't be surprised if someone, not necessarily a software engineer done everything, or an analytics engineer who done almost all of those. So yeah, that's the beauty of Airflow. You can really use it for everything. So yeah. My journey to Gremlin. So probably you would be asking how come someone with Apache Airflow user was ended up with Gremlin. So in one of the roles previously worked with, they had Azure Cosmos DB, which is a managed basically service for the Apache TinkerPop, which basically uses the Gremlin API for doing the either transformations or adding data into the graph DB. I'm not going to go too much details with the use case, but it's kind of they have the relationship between the users within the platform, and that the relationship is kind of like inherited between one to another. So if person C has access to something and they are related to person B and person C, and person A can go, you can, get access to whatever privileges person C has to, for the person A, to know what access they have, basically. So yeah, I came in to basically get the users and all of their maybe you can say relationships and what they can access to as well, but primarily is getting getting that kind of relationship in a structured way, more in a one single table. So that was kind of the goal for myself, to retrieve all of those users and all of their connected users or the related users recursively. And that was kind of where I had to use Gremlin, which is like the query language used by Cosmos DB. So probably the challenge was to learn how to use Gremlin at the beginning, and then down the line, just understand how I can query the data and get it recursively, which is more like an advanced way to query anything, I would believe, in a Gremlin or maybe an even graph database. So yeah, that's where I had to use Airflow to basically do everything for me, get there into the Apache, into the Cosmos DB, which was running the Gremlin server, and execute those kind of queries on using using Airflow for it, which was using Gremlin Python package, if you're familiar with it. So I had to look into basically a kind of what's there on the shelf for Apache Airflow that can provide me to connect to Apache TinkerPop, or in that case, Cosmos DB, and I found none. So I was thinking, what should I do? I was not able to find Apache, of course, like a provider, an Airflow provider. So I ended up just creating an Airflow hook, which is a common thing that you can do for whenever you don't have like a provider that's already provided by by the community. You would go and build up your own hook, you can say. I think you can also do your own provider, which cannot be a provide like available for the public, but in my scenario, I did not have to build that. All I needed was to create a hook so that I can, package it up and also do some testing on it. So that was kind of the initial approach for me to get, at least get the data out from Cosmos DB. Long time after that, after getting that project done, moving on from different roles, I was thinking to actually, why not go in and bridge between those two different Apache softwares, and I thought of course implementing the provider. And that's when it happened, like in February, I think. I was mostly just working out of hours, to get that done and to understand how that should, be built. So yeah, that's when the journey started to completely like build a fully at least like a MVP, what I would call it, and that can be accepted by the Airflow community. Yeah, it kind of took a while to just get myself get a grasp on the development tools that exist for the for Airflow, and it was I wouldn't say like a massive obstacle, a steep learning curve there. So if anyone is looking for doing anything for Airflow in general or for this specific provider, I think you'll be able to do that. If I did it, you guys can do it too. Anyone who's thinking of getting there and helping out with this specific provider as well. I'm going to talk more about this at the end of the probably at the end of my talk on how you can help. So yeah, a completely full-fledged, Airflow provider was done, and the community merged it, accepted it after some, of course, reviews and implementing full testing on it. So it was completely, you can say, released, I think, in May, early May, maybe. Time has gone really quick, so I can't really remember exact dates, but yeah. So the technical decisions that I took along the way was one of the things that I was trying to implement. I think there's like a remote traversal driver for the Python package. I was trying to implement that and look and compare it with client, like the client class. But I ended up settling for the client because it's simple and you can just pass in the Gremlin query as it is, without having to worry about how the Python driver can, manipulate your query. I faced a bit of a bit of like something I would say, because it's been a while, can't remember but exactly, but it was challenging to make it work with driver. It's not possible. It's just it was going to take me longer time to make that work in comparison to client, so I just went for the client. And of course, that was having also doing some testing, of course, I said, but specific integration testing to make sure that everything I built within that provider is fully tested before anyone can use it, even even installing it, installing the provider on its own. You'll be able to be fully feeling safe that it has been tested within the CI. So yeah, that kind of testing was completely done in addition to having integration test as well. Using the provider is pretty simple. As soon as you get like the Airflow image, you can just install it within the image, which is all Dockerized, of course. And also you can use it to connect to a self-hosted Gremlin server, which I will explain shortly in the demo. And also you can use it to connect to whatever managed service you use, if it's Cosmos DB or AWS Neptune. To be honest, I haven't used it. I haven't tested it with AWS Neptune. I did test it with Azure Cosmos DB. So if anyone using AWS Neptune who would like to go and test it, can give me a shout, and I can help out if there's any problems with that.
I actually hope to do that soon. I haven't had a moment yet, but I do want to try and get it going with Neptune, letting folks know how it works.
Yeah, I mean, give me a shout if there's any challenges. I'm kind of didn't have the time, to be honest, to get anything outside of Azure Cosmos DB and the normal, self-hosted Gremlin, my local machine.
Yeah.
So I'll be more than happy to to guide if there's any issue or benefits of having the provider. Of course, instead of having custom hook, if you remember in my previous, I built my own custom hook here to get the data out from that project I worked on, users and recursively. Here, now I don't need to build my own custom hook. I can just install that provider, call a specific class within the provider, which I'll explain in the demo, and then you can just run whatever query you want. And of course, it's fully tested. It has you don't need to build like a test suite anymore because it's already tested, and regression tested happened already in a CI within the Airflow repo. So yeah, maybe now I can jump into probably the last slide, before I jump into the demo. What kind of use cases that you can have you can install the TinkerPop provider within Airflow, and where do you want to use it exactly here? One of the examples can be, a batch querying of your graph database, basically similar to what I've done, the scenario I explained to you with my previous employer, where I had to extract users and other users connected to them or related to them recursively. That kind of way, you can just query your Gremlin query and get the data out for further analysis or for any other purpose. You can also do transaction executions where you just want to like write new vertices or a new edge. That kind of executions you can easily do as well. So it's not limited to what kind of size of data. And of course, you can schedule your transformations if you have some transformations that you need to run on your graph. Could be someone having their age on there, and then a year after that the age is still the same. You can run some, I don't know how advanced Gremlin can do that for you, but you can update their age on the graph. So that kind of scheduled transformations you can do. So I think with my demo, I feel like I'm gonna probably just be looking at the first two, which is like transaction execution and maybe batch graph query. So yeah, let me jump into that. For some reason, I'm getting an issue, which was hopefully now I can run it again. Let's see.
All right, and we're back. Kill the
Hello.
kill
Sorry
some
for
of the
everyone. Yes,
stuff
apologies
here
for everyone. I am connected now to my Windows device, and let me share my screen again, which is going to pop up the Airflow.
There we go.
Cool. All right. So for anyone who was looking probably at my on my screen in my previous device. I'm probably just going to do this quick one just to make sure I've got latest. Not really. Should be fine. Just a minor changes to here, but nothing to the tags. Yeah, that's fine. Cool. So I spin up the Airflow. It's kind of as basic as running a Docker Compose in any kind of application. If anyone wants to look into it, you can find everything in here and what application is spinning up. And besides spinning up the Apache Airflow, it's also spinning up the Gremlin server and the kind of like a database that I want to use, like a relation database that I want to use for the sake of the demo, which is MySQL. And of course, there is also a Docker file, which is building the image for me for the Airflow. In this case, I'm installing and running 3.0.2 and installing the Apache TinkerPop provider plus the MySQL, which is the provider for the relation database I'm using as part of the demo. Cool. So now I spin up the, after spinning the application up on all of the other services, for anyone who's wondering what has been spin up, it's you can see everything within the containers list as well. So yeah, I'm not going to get into details of what each one doing because I already explained it. But yeah, this is what kind of the repo spins up for you. If I go back and just slightly here and explain probably what kind of the structure of it. You have a folder here for configuration. You have the folder for DAGs, folder for spinning up the Gremlin server and setting it up here, and also the logs and SQL for just basic SQL script to ingest or like create some objects inside the MySQL database. I think I have missed a few things that I need to do here, which is actually executing the set as part of the setup. I need to create some objects within Airflow and also create the create some data within the Gremlin server. So let me just do that, which is copy relative path. Paste it here. It should. What did I miss? Always can go back into Docker. I think I just need to run it this way. Yes, because this is a PowerShell. So there you go. The set up connections did not. It's not possible to find it. Anyways, I will do a quick fix here, a quick setup because it's a different machine. I'm just gonna run it myself inside the hopefully that will be a quick one, and paste. There you go. So here I'm just creating like the connections for the Airflow to understand there is somewhere that you can connect to and what kind of credentials you need. So here I created that for Gremlin, and now I'm going to create the same thing for the MySQL, which is going to be see it in a bit. This is kind of like the set like the connection URI for specifically for whenever you post it on your Docker desktop as a container. So you'll have to basically specify it in kind of this way, which is might be strange for some people, but this is how it is. Going back into, I think we fully set it up. Maybe one more thing that I need to set up here, which is actually creating the objects within the MySQL database. These things were already created in my other machine, but I have to create them now here because didn't expect that to be the case. What it has created just like the table and truncate the table if there's something in there. It creates it only if it exists, if it does not exist, sorry. And it sets just a single row here. Now I can start with Airflow, what it is. Now I need to log in, which I think with the, not now. And here we are. This is the kind of the UI of Apache Airflow. And this is usually like the landing page, but what you are probably going to look for every time you look into here is what kind of the DAGs that you have. It's all fetched in from the local setup or the local directory here mentioned earlier, DAGs. You can see the Cosmos DB, the same naming almost as a list. And probably one of the things I would like to explain in here is just simple, maybe what each each tab maybe tells you, which in this case, DAGs, of course, as explained earlier, DAGs is the normal term for the pipelines in Airflow. And then here you have kind of like a history of what runs. And the task instance is within each DAG, you have a task instance whenever it runs. So that kind of, you can see it in here. We're not going to look into those tabs. I'm just going to keep on probably referring to this page and also another page that I explain later on, which is called assets. It's kind of a new feature within Airflow as well. So the first thing, probably I would go into one of those tags. In this case, I will look into the Gremlin data tag, and in here, the tabs, you can also look into the code, what it looks like. This is exactly the code as in the directory. So if you look here, it looks exactly the same as what we have in my local directory. So this kind of like make it really easy for you to see what's being actually running. You won't do any editing on here, but you'll at least be able to see what the code is doing instead of having to go into your like GitHub or your local machine to see what's running. I want to run this basically pipeline or this DAG so that you can see what kind of data we have inside the Gremlin server, which I already set up just earlier before jumping into Airflow, the UI. If you remember, I executed the PowerShell script to run some setup processes. So one of them is actually populating the Gremlin query, the Gremlin server. Now, if I execute this kind of DAG, we'll be able to see probably what data we have in there. It will log out the number of results, and then it will print it out for us. So this is kind of just to tell you what we have in there before I carry on with actual, more challenging or more, you can say, advanced DAG. I will first turn on the toggle here. It shouldn't run because it's not on a schedule. It will only be triggered if I manually trigger it, which why I built it in the first place, just giving you a glimpse. So as soon as I trigger that up, task instance appears on here, and I can click on it here and see what kind of tasks has been running. And if I click on query element data, this is one of the tasks. It's the only one. And here you can see the logs for kind of like, you can say, the entire task instance that spins it that generates those kind of logs, but you also the logs that I created or I coded within the Python script inside the DAG. So you can see here we have 10, and we kind of, this is the vertices that we have. It's just movie actor kind of like data set to say this is the this is the data that we have there, and this kind of like what each one represent, what each of those vertices or what vertices represent. So yeah, going into probably more advanced DAG now. I will show kind of like a flow first of more maybe like a higher level DAG orchestrator maybe. We have here like a DAG and then a middle, I would say like a middle kind of task, and then another DAG. This middle task, I wouldn't call it a task, it's called an asset. It's kind of like connecting these two kind of DAGs together. Basically, what happens is that when this DAG successfully runs without any failures, it generates kind of an event that goes into this asset, and this asset can also trigger for me another DAG. So maybe this is going like too much advanced, but this is kind of like, I want to explain to you what will happen soon. So when this runs successfully, this kind of asset will generate an event, which in return will execute this DAG for me. I'm going to toggle this one on so that I can just have it on whenever this is executed. As soon as an event comes through, this will be triggered as well. So I can also go into this DAG and manually trigger it, but this is not what we want to do. I want kind of Airflow to manage that for me, basically. You're probably wondering why I'm actually going for this flow. Going back to the slides, what I wanted to, do a simple, a representation of what we can do with Apache TinkerPop and Airflow. So in this case, what I wanted to do is extract data from my relational database. Maybe it could be like a transactional database used by the application, like whatever platform you're using. You have maybe MySQL, or you have, I don't know, kind of maybe some other transactional database like a SQL Server that you want to query the data out from. Maybe you want to do that every minute, every hour, and then you want to extract that transactional data and then do some transformations on it, and then chunk it all into Gremlin server. But then after you want to put that all data in a Gremlin server or in a Gremlin graph database. You want to also extract that data for other purposes, such as analytical purposes, where you want to extract the whole data set within your graph database, and then ingest it into your maybe OLAP database, if it's a Snowflake or if it's a Redshift or if it's a BigQuery, whatever you want, you can kind of orchestrate that kind of things in here. So yeah, if I go into this specific query, which says MySQL to Gremlin, as the name says, it will extract the data from MySQL and then do some transformations into it, and then load it into the Gremlin database. Probably I don't want to look into the code slightly before I say, like, let's go and click run. This, I think, this DAG is actually on scheduler. So you can say it's an hourly basis, as you can see it within the code as well. And it will be executed as soon as I put the toggle on, actually. So yeah, the first step I explained, which is extracting the data. You can see me here connecting to MySQL using the hook, which is the MySQL provider hook. Basically, I was able to import it as normally as just importing it into my script, and then executing a select statement, which basically queries the data within MySQL, and then that data is coming as data frame. If you're familiar with pandas within Python, it basically generates it as a data frame, where it's later on is being passed on this transform data task, which you can see it in here. This will just basically do some transformations in it. Here, it's really basic transformations. I don't think you probably need that transformation, but I just thought of having it as an example here to say this year is a integer, or this can be even an integer, but not a bother for Gremlin. You can do more things. Let's say if you have first name and second name, or first name and last name, you want to have it both, transformed to be one as a single name instead of having two fields. You want to have it one field. You can do that in kind of this step. So yeah, that kind of things that you can do with the transform data task, you can say. I'm here for just giving you like an idea of what other ways you can do it. And loading into Gremlin is the last one here, which is also using the Gremlin hook, the provider that was created by me, which is being imported in here, and using the connection I created. If you remember, just before I jump into this UI, the Airflow UI was creating the Gremlin connection and MySQL connection within the Docker container. So that's basically calling that connection ID, and then going through each of the records that I have basically extracted from the MySQL. It loops through them and then basically passes them into Gremlin server as vertices, basically for each one of them. For each vertex, it gets called its own Gremlin query. And then of course it executes. Sorry, before I jump, I need to go back here. I need to explain here. It's just actually constructing the query for you. It's not really calling it. This is where it's being called and executed. So that's where the query is being passed on to the run method within the hook class, and then it basically goes into the Gremlin server and basically creates the field for you if it's not created, and if I think also can update it for you in this case. Yeah.
Can I interrupt you for 1 second? Because there was a question from someone in Discord.
Yeah.
So can the MySQL to Gremlin logic handle data deletion, meaning data was deleted in MySQL, will it get deleted from Gremlin server? So basically, like, how are mutations working outside of like kind of the batch execution, I guess you're demonstrating?
Yeah, I mean, for this kind of demo, you can say this is the simplest thing that I've implemented, but you can also do much more than that with Airflow. Not just deleting, you can also do updating. Anything that has changed within your your MySQL, your query will basically tells you this this record has been deleted. If you have kind of, I would say, some maybe CDC mechanism, in MySQL, then definitely this can be, adopted within your flow inside Airflow. You can also implement that for sure. I wouldn't say exactly this DAG, but definitely Airflow can also do that for you. So the limitations is not limited to kind of this, this DAG. You can do it with any kind of approach you want. If you're having deletions, if you're having updates, if you're having any CRUD transaction in your database, you can easily implement some DAG or workflow in Airflow to implement the change for you down the line. If you want to delete the record in Gremlin at that point, you can do so.
Okay, thank you.
So the Gremlin hook is not set specifically for adding only. You can do it whatever Gremlin query, and you can run it on Gremlin. I would say on a Gremlin server. I hope that answered the question. Yeah. So yeah, this is what the DAG will do. So as soon as I put the toggle on, we'll see kind of an extra, I think, an extra record being written into the Gremlin. So if I do this, and that sounds like to this flow, you'll see it here. The task, the DAG has run, and you can see everything was successful. The first task here, what I did was just actually querying the data from MySQL and then printing it out for us. So what you see here is that there's a new movie that we have in the table, or I queried the table, and one of there seemed to be like a new movie type record coming in, which is called Titanic. And the transformations done its transformations on the data, which is probably negligible in this case. It's not doing that much. And then it's actually telling us that data has been loaded successfully, which is the log that we got from the code itself. So if you remember earlier, I was mentioning that we have, as soon as this is actually being executed, we should now see the data coming into Gremlin, but also some event should be generated into the asset that will execute another DAG, which in return will, query the entire Gremlin server for us. So if I go back in here and click on this asset, which is being specified within this DAG, it looks like it has generated for us the event, and probably you would guess that, okay, now we have an extra data that should be in the in the Gremlin server an extra vertex specifically that we should be able to see now in the Gremlin. So this DAG should show us the whole data set plus the new record. Maybe before I get into that, I want to refresh your mind about the Gremlin data, which I ran it at the first DAG I ran. If I go back into this specific task, we can see there's 10. Probably you'd be guessing that now it should be 11 if I rerun it again. What if I do that and we should be able to see it? And it'll be shame if it doesn't. It's a demo, right? There you go, it's 11 records. So now we do have a new record in our Gremlin that also has the Titanic as well, which we didn't have it before, right? We didn't have Titanic here. There you go. So we do have this new record coming in. And now we should also be able to see that, the other DAG, which is the extract Gremlin data DAG, having, run without me, executing it myself manually. So you can see here the icon, which means the asset icon, which means that it was executed by an asset. And if I go in here, it's basic. The only thing I did in here is just query the Gremlin database, nothing else, to be honest. So yeah, that's all what it's doing. So if I go back into the logs, just do a wrap here, you will be able to see the entire data set that we have in the Gremlin database, and also including the new record, which is Titanic. So this is kind of like one use case, I would say. Maybe this DAG can go further, and I can query, actually ingest the data somewhere else. If I have Snowflake, maybe I'll add another task in here and, take this data set and pass it in. I did follow like the simplest way, and maybe not following the best practices, I would say, for how this should be done, but I implemented a very simple thing so that you can understand what Airflow is and how it can be integrated with TinkerPop. And also there's other DAGs there, which is another DAG here, which is Cosmos data. This is specifically for Cosmos DB. To be honest, I haven't tested it with like in a while, but it should be working. Within here, why I wanted to explain this one, probably because I want to get into the run maybe method, which I mentioned it earlier. When I executed, if you remember the DAG earlier that was executed, it had the query first being constructed and then being passed. This is kind of the same thing happening here, but here we have a serializer as well that's being passed in, which also is being imported into the Gremlin, into the Python script. This is something that you can also pass in. There's other arguments that you can pass in, so that if you have specific timeouts or anything else, you can also pass it in. You can find more explanations on that on the Gremlin provider documentation. I think I'm running really late on everyone, but sadly we got the issue with my device, so I'm gonna go try to get back into the slides quickly and try to briefly get, or as fast as I can, to explain what's left. I think, yeah, that's pretty much about the demo. And probably what's next. One of the things I mentioned earlier is the client class. Maybe now we can have a look and enhance the capability of the provider to also take in the driver. You're probably wondering, why would I take that? Maybe I haven't done too much digging into it, but it feels like driver might be also a good option than having a client. It manages the connection for you, I think, better than the client does. I might be wrong, but yeah. And also the get client, which has, there's a method within the hook that I was explaining, the Gremlin hook has this method where you can pass in the arguments like serializer or any of the other things I did create it with kind of like any arguments that is required by the client, but maybe something more need to be configured into it, I would say. Stephen, I remember you did, I think, review my code and mentioned that it should be having some arguments into it. This is kind of things that probably need to be
I would say that's probably the most important thing. Something else that should be there is just all the configuration options. You really don't know what you really don't know exactly what you might need when you get into a situation, and when you don't have all the ways to connect things, it can sometimes or configure things. It ends up being it can end up being a little frustrating. But I think you have like kind of the important things in there now. But yeah, definitely for next things, find out what all the options are and just make sure folks have a way to pass them in.
Yeah. Yeah, totally agree. Getting into the last thing here, resources. So Apache Airflow docs, the demo, you can find it as well. I'm sure Stephen can help me with that, also sharing it, which you can go in and run it yourself. I think the README file is well documented and you can easily run it, hopefully. You shouldn't face much problems similar to my other machine. And you'll find also the Apache TinkerPop Airflow docs, as well as the PyPI documentation. Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Any questions? Sorry again for everyone about the technical issues. Glad that I was able to make it still with another machine though.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, it's a live demo. Things bound to go awry. I think I don't see any questions at the moment. Oh, someone's typing. But in the meantime, I guess maybe a question I had was what version of Airflow were you demonstrating there? Is that 3.0?
That's 3. Yes, that's 3. Yeah. So that's Apache Airflow 3, which was released I think over a month ago now, and yeah, it shouldn't have any bug issues. When you have the first 3.00 or like the first version of any major changes, thankfully there's nothing at the moment with it, or at least on my local machine. And any problems that face it gets fixed really quick and really not recognizable, I would say. But in my previous place where I used Apache, it was actually on 2.6, so it was not even with this UI with the dark mode and assets feature as well.
Yeah, it definitely looks a little different than what I remember in poking around in 2. So yeah, that looks good. Airflow community is doing a good job. Maybe another question I had was just about the asset point. Like I wasn't. Is that like just holding it intermediately holding data from one DAG that can then be shared to others? Is that kind of the right logic to think about with the asset?
You can say it's more like a way of, instead of calling the DAG from another DAG, you can just have an intermediary step within your flow between like two different different DAGs. I wouldn't say it holds data for you, because there's like a metadata that does that as well, but it's more like it's a queue kind of type of thing. If you're familiar with like the queues, of course you are. The queue kind of way of implementing. I'm trying to remember exactly the same thing, like an event-based queue.
Okay.
Yeah, that kind of thing. It doesn't really hold the data for you, but it mostly just tells you this DAG should be running after this asset has an event where it will execute another DAG. But another thing that I've seen it recently as well, and it was released I think with Airflow 3 as well with assets, but I haven't tested it yet myself, which you can use assets feature for getting data from messaging services like SQS or Kafka. You can connect or set that up for an asset, and then that would trigger for you the DAG as well. So you can use it for that as well.
Okay. Maybe another little question I'll just from Discord, maybe a follow-up to the last one. What are you familiar with any like the hooks or events Airflow has to kind of easily detect update deletion in a data set, or is it something that you kind of have to do as a developer yourself?
I think you have to do it yourself. That's
Okay. No magic. Okay.
I think so. Yeah, I don't think it's like Airflow can figure out like a CRUD, transaction. We're not with Airflow. It's not specifically for data, changes within a database. It's really a tool that you can use it for almost everything to execute Python script, right?
Yeah.
It's a proper orchestration tool than it is an ETL or ELT tool.
Okay. Cool. And maybe on that note, as you mentioned, like the type of tool, are you familiar with other things that are kind of like Airflow? What would folks know that it's kind of like it, or you might have to make a decision between Airflow and something else. What would the something else be?
I mean, I want to say Dagster is there as well. I haven't used it myself, and I think Dagster is the most like one that I've heard is equivalent to it, or maybe Prefect as well. I'm not here promoting anything.
Sure.
But I think Dagster is an open source, I think. So yeah, I'm sure Prefect is, but with the support that you get with Airflow, I don't think either of them as much. Yeah.
Yeah, they're very active. I mean, they've got a lot of stuff happening in that community.
And it's the oldest of all, I think.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I think it is like one of the oldest ones that were there.
All right, very good. Okay, well, I think with that, I think we can kind of close off the stream. Did you have any other final things you wanted to say?
No, thank you, Stephen, for giving me the chance. My pleasure to actually present and give like a walkthrough for the entire Apache TinkerPop community. And I do apologize again for what we faced with the technical issues. It happened. It happens a lot, I would say, but never thought it would happen. Such an error comes up during the stream, but there you go.
All right. Well, no, you pulled it off. I mean, at the end of the day, we did get a demo, so we weren't left with we weren't left wanting for a demo because we did get one. So it ended well. Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for joining. Thank you for getting the two projects sort of working together. And thanks everybody for listening today. Until the next one. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Thanks.